Okay, so we're down to the second part of our capital budgeting. We are now going to discuss reinvestment assumptions. So the concept of reinvestment is that whenever your initial project or your first project has already been concluded and you already earned from that particular project, you can reinvest your returns or you can reinvest whatever you had in that particular project to another project. Okay? So, with regards to reinvestment, our main concern here is at what amount are we going to reinvest that particular project. Okay? So, there are basically two returns that we can use. It's either using the IRR or the internal rate of return or the net present value. Okay? The key argument with using IRR is that if the internal rate of return or if the IRR is too high, okay, meaning there is a probability that you had a good return in one particular project, if you're going to use the IRR as your reinvestment rate, okay, it may be unrealistic and it may result to a very high reinvestment return, okay, which means that it is not usually attainable. Okay, that's why under under more acceptable methods, it is better if we're going to use net present value. Okay, because under the net present value method, there will be more consistency. Okay, because we are going to reinvest the initial returns using the discount rate or the cost of capital. Okay, so this is basically the reinvestment assumption. Okay, so under reinvestment, whatever income or whatever cash flows you got from your investment, regardless of whether you chose investment A or investment B, these returns will be reinvested at the cost of capital. Okay, in our presentation, we are using the 10% cost of capital, and this will be our assumption all throughout the discussion. So meaning, if you have your return or if you have a cash flow of 5,000 in year 1, you are going to reinvest that using the 10% discount rate, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, of course, your cash flows for the initial years or the first years, okay, or the earlier years will have a higher return because it has more period or a more time in compounding or in reinvestment. Okay, that's why if you look into the arrows, there is a longer investment period for those returns in the initial years. Okay, so how are we going to relate that now to the MIRR? Okay, so this is another investment assumption wherein we are going to compute for the modified internal rate of return by combining or by assuming that whatever you are going to earn, okay, is going to be reinvested at net present value. Okay? So basically, it combines the investment assumptions of the net present value method with the internal rate of return. So this is a combined NPV and IRR, or net present value and internal rate of return. And the formula is as follows. Investment is equal to the terminal value of inflows divided by the MIRR. So if you want to get the MIRR, then it's going to be, you just derive the formula. That's going to be MIRR. You transfer this to the other side, you transfer it here. So it's going to be terminal value of inflows divided by the investment. Okay? So to start with, let us assume that we have this information. So assuming you have 10,000, and it will produce inflows for the next 3 years as follows: 6,000, 5,000, and 2,850. Cost of capital is 10%, and we are going to compute for the terminal value of the inflows by using the 10% as the factor. So the 6,000, the 5,000, and the 2,500 is going to be reinvested at the 10% future value. So again, we already discussed how to compute this, okay? So using our calculator, if we are going to get the future value factor compounding for 2 periods, okay, now the question is how did we get 2 periods? If the inflows is for 3 years and you already got this in year 1, then you have 2 years left. if you will receive your inflow in year 2, you have 1 period to compound it. And if you get your income in year 3, it will not be compounded, or it will not earn anymore because there is no period for growth anymore, because this is the last year of the project. So if we have 10%, so that's going to be 1.1, and then click multiply or multiplication function twice, 1, 2. Okay? 1.1 is already the first year, and you click enter, that's going to be the second year. That's why you have 1.21 there. Okay? So that's basically the concept. So year 1 return has a future value of 7,260 if it is going to grow for 2 periods. Okay? Another approach here is basically to get 6,000 and then multiply it by 1.1. So that's already for 1 year. Multiply it again by 1.1. That's 2 years. Okay? So that's basically sorry. That's basically how you compute for future value, considering a growth rate of 10%. Okay? For the 5,000, that's basically 5,000, it will grow 10%, so times 1.1, so that's 5,500. Okay? For year 3, no growth because this is going to be earned on the last year of the investment. Get the total, that's going to be 15,610. So how are we going to get the MIRR? Okay? So it's going to be investment divided by the terminal value. Okay? So 10,000 divided by the terminal value. Okay? So you will get 0.641. So the question there is what percentage will give you 0.641 present value in 3 years? Okay? So that's basically going to be computed on a trial and error basis. Okay? Okay, let's see if there is a computation in the next slide. Okay, so it's not there. So basically, we're going to use our calculator. Okay, so we'll use our calculator and determine what factor will give us 0.641 in 3 years. So let's start first with the 10% itself. So if that is 1.1, divide, then enter. 3 years, 1, 2, 3. So that's too high, so we're going to go to a higher discount rate. So let's try 1.12, divide, enter, and then 3 years, 1, 2, 3. So that's still too high. we need to get 0.641. So let's try 14%. 1.14, divide, enter, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're getting near. So this is already 14%. Let's try 16%. 1.16, divide, enter. Then 3 periods, 1, 2, 3. Oh, there. So basically, 16%. Okay, so we are doing trial and error. We are trying to get the internal rate or the modified internal rate of return by computing the factor or by getting the discount rate that will give us this factor. So using this information and using our computation, it means that the modified internal rate of return is 16%. Okay? So if your cost of capital is 10%, and your MIRR is 16%, it means that your project is actually worthwhile because you are going to earn 6% more than your cost of capital. So that's how you do it. Okay? Next, we go to capital rationing. Okay? So capital rationing is an artificial restraint set on the usage of funds that can be reinvested in a given period. Okay? So the reason for doing capital rationing is you don't want to do lots of things at once, okay? Because you do not want to have an overgrowth in your business because it's going to be difficult to handle later on. So the concept of capital rationing is you are going to set a limit as to how many or how much you're going to invest in a given period. Okay? So this may be opted because you fear too much growth. Again, you don't want to have too much growth because it's difficult to manage later on. And because of your hesitation to use external sources of funding. Why? Because take note, if you want to have a faster growth and your funds is not enough for you to fund those particular projects, then you may opt or you are going to need external sources of funding. So if you don't want that, then it's better for you to use capital rationing in order for you to simply maximize what capital you already have. Okay? Now the offside of using capital rationing is that it hinders a firm from achieving the maximum profitability, because basically they are going to they are going to limit their investments or their capital budgeting projects with the current fund that they have. So as an example, let's have this. Assuming we have projects A, B, C, D, E, and F, okay, with the particular investments, okay, and based on capital rationing, let's assume that the company only wanted to have 5,000 or 5 million as their total investment. So even if we look into the project, okay, if you look into all of these projects and looking at the net present value, all of these projects are actually going to be accepted, project A until project E, because it has a positive net present value. Okay? Project F will not be accepted because it has a negative net present value. So if we are not going to consider capital rationing, we are actually going to do all projects A until projects E. Okay? However, if we are going to apply capital rationing and considering that the company only wants to invest 5 million, then their solution is only to invest in 3 projects A, B, and C only, because that is only the amount that their capital can allow, and these are the only projects that is worthwhile considering that it has the top 3 highest net present value. Okay, so that's the concept of capital rationing. Okay, but again, if you because they are doing that, they are missing out on the additional $140,000 earnings. Okay, so but again, we cannot decide for them because they are practicing capital rationing. Okay, so let's now go to our net present value profile. So the net present value profile is giving us a graphical presentation or representation of the NPVs of projects at different discount rates for us to give us an idea as to the overall views, okay, of how the project will work. Okay, to apply the net present value profile, 3 characteristics needs to be looked into. So you need to first look at the net present value at a 0 discount rate. So basically, this is going to be payback period. Next is the net present value as determined by a normal discount rate, which is the cost of capital. And third is the internal rate of return of the investments. So basically, net present value profile is going to cover the payback period, the normal net present value, and the IRR, or internal rate of return. So basically, this is how it looks like. Okay, so this is the net present value profile. So this is simply just a tabular presentation of your investments. This is investment A, the one we use as an example, and this is investment B. So looking at the graphical presentation, you will still say, or you will still conclude that investment B is better because it has a higher graph, or it has a higher advantage as compared to investment A, which has only a potential of up to this particular period or this particular line. Okay, so looking into the graph of your investment A and investment B by plotting the graph of the this is at 0 discount rate, so this pertains to your payback period. This is your net present value, and this is your internal rate of return. Okay, so you are simply trying to plot all the information just to give you an idea of which investment is actually better. So again, your decision guide is the same. This is just another way to present your returns or your potential results if you're going to go for investment A or investment B. Okay? So what is the net present value profile with crossover? Okay? So this one is looking into determining which is going to be, or at what point are we going to consider 2 investment opportunities as the same. Okay, meaning there is no difference. Okay, so looking into this, there is a crossover, okay, between investment B and investment C. This is just an example. This is not really part of our initial data. So there is a crossover on this point, and looking into the graph, there the crossover point is 8.7 discount rate, which means that if you can reduce your cost of capital to 8.7, then you can actually, it does not matter even if you're going to choose investment B or investment C. Okay, because the 8.7 discount rate is going to be the indifference point. Okay, so that's basically how it works. So looking into this information, since your investment is actually since your investment has a, or since your company has a cost of capital of 10%, okay, which is the points plotted here, then it means that it is still better to choose investment C because it has a higher return, okay, as compared to investment B. Okay, so that's basically how it works. So it means that at any cost of capital lower than 8.7, investment B is better. At a cost of capital that is higher than 8.7, investment C becomes better. Okay, so that's how it works. That's how you make the decision. Okay, we now go to rules of depreciation. This is just an item that we are going to discuss for purposes of understanding the concept of the modified accelerated cost recovery system. The usual depreciation that company uses are the depreciation methods that we have in financial accounting, which are straight line, sum of years digits, double declining balance, output input method, and all of those. However, for financial management purposes, there is a concept known as MACRS, or modified accelerated cost recovery system, which is a method of depreciating an asset based on a certain percentage depending on the number of years of the useful life of an asset. So also we have the ADR, or the asset depreciation range, which is the expected physical life of the asset or class of assets. Okay, so basically the MACRS or the modified accelerated cost recovery system is dependent on the number of years you can use the asset. To illustrate further, this is basically the classes. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9 types of investments, or 9 types of classes, or 9 categories of assets, depending on how many years you can use it. So for purposes of financial management decisions, you can use these classes, okay, depending on what type of asset you have. So example, a 3-year MACRS is applicable for all properties with ADR midpoints of 4 years or less, such as automotives and light trucks. Okay, automotive and light trucks are excluded from this category. So basically, all assets that has a 3-year or maybe around 4 years or less can use the 3-year MACRS as the depreciation method. Okay, so 5-year MACRS, 7-year MACRS, etc. Okay, so this depends on what types of properties you have. Like for example, 39 years MACRS is applicable for non-residential real property places in service after May 12, 1993. So basically, all real estate or real properties that you have that was constructed or created 1993 and beyond, then you can use the 39-year MACRS. Okay, but basically, we're not going to have this. We're only going to have the theoretical portions of the assessment, but not the computation. Okay, just to give you an idea, this is how you are going to divide or determine the depreciation depending on the MACRS that you're going to use. So to illustrate further, assume that you have an asset worth 1 million, and based on the illustration or based on the table that you have in the previous slide, you're going to use the 5 years MACRS. Okay? So if you're going to use the 5 years MACRS, assuming the 1 million has no residual value, then the depreciation for year 1 is equal to 0.2 of 1 million. Okay? So that's going to be 1 million times 0.2. So this will be your depreciation for year 1. For year 2, that's going to be 1 million times 0.32. So we have 320,000 depreciation for year 2. Okay, so on and so forth. Basically, you are just going to use the percentages, okay, or the amounts given here in order for you to compute the depreciation for the entire year. Okay. Now, take note that 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years does not necessarily mean that you're going to depreciate them over the years given here. Because you have an allowance of 1 year, considering that the midpoint of the items that you're going to depreciate under 3-year MACRS is usually 4 years. Okay? So this is the MACRS category is only used to determine the category of your asset, but the percentage depreciation is going to be based on the table provided here. Okay? So that's basically how it works. Okay, moving on. So this is going to be an example of a depreciation table. Assuming you have a 50,000 asset depreciation base, you multiply it using the depreciation table. I think this is for 5-year MACRS. Okay, 5-year MACRS. So you're going to compute the depreciation, and at the end of 6 years, basically the total amount is already depreciated. So that's basically how you do it. Okay, we now go to tax rate. Okay, so again, the tax rate is going to affect your investment decisions or your capital budgeting decisions later on, because basically your tax rate will depend or will be the basis of how much tax shield you're going to get from your depreciation later on. Okay, so this is applicable, or this income tax rates are used in the US, but however in the Philippines currently we are using the 30% corporate tax. But I think later on, when the CREATE bill is already enacted, your tax rate will be 25% on average, 20-25%. Okay, so but basically that's the idea here is you need to understand the tax rate you are operating in, because that will be the basis of the tax shield of your depreciation later on. Okay. So we now go to an actual investment decision. So let us assume that you have 50,000 depreciation analysis, okay, for a purchase of machinery with a 6-year productive life. It produces an income of 18,500 for the first 3 years before deduction for depreciation and taxes. In the last 3 years, income before depreciation and taxes will be 12,000, and corporate tax rate is 35%, assuming a cost of capital also is 10%. For each year, depreciation is subtracted from earnings before depreciation and taxes to arrive at earnings before taxes. And then taxes are subtracted to determine earnings after tax, and depreciation is added to determine the cash flow. So basically that's just the concept of how we're going to do it. So this is how it's going to work. Okay? So it says there, this will be the earnings, 18,500 for first 3 years and 12,000 for the next 3 years. Depreciation is going to be this amount, and this is actually based on the MACRS table that we had in the previous slide, which is this one. 10,000, 16, 96, 5,750, 5,750, and 29. Okay, so this is based on the 5-year MACRS. So going back, this is the depreciation. So you will now get earnings before tax. You're going to compute 35% tax based on the earnings before tax, and you are going to get the earnings after tax. And then after which, you add back the depreciation to get the cash flow. So this is how it works. Okay, so that's basically your answer there. Okay, so if you're given this particular problem or this particular types of problem, this is how you compute it. Okay, so looking into this information, your cash flow in year 2 is the highest. Okay, considering that the depreciation gave you the highest tax shield during the period. Okay, or during the entire 6-year period, this is the year 2 depreciation gave you the highest tax shield. Okay, so basically the concept is higher tax shield will result to higher cash flows later on. Okay, so next thing that you're going to do, if you're going to compute for the NPV or the net present value, you get the cash flows, you multiply it by the factors using 10% discount. Again, to reiterate, this is how you do it. 1.1 and then divide, enter. Okay, since the figure is 1, this is not yet the first period. So 1, so 9.09, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So basically, the problem simply used 3 decimal places. Okay? And then, you multiply the cash flows by the net present value or the present value factor, you're going to get the present values. You get all of this, that's the total present value of the inflows minus the cost of the project. You will get a net present value of 7.991. Okay? So, considering this, then you can say that you need, or it is okay for you to continue the project because it has a positive net present value. So that's basically how it works. Okay, we go to the replacement decisions. Okay, replacement decision pertains to whenever there is a new technology available or new equipments, new items that you can incorporate in your business. You're going to assess whether it is okay or it is best for your business to actually replace that particular old equipment for a new one. So, this includes several additions to the basic investment situation because you need to consider the sale of the old machine and tax consequences for the sale. And the decisions can be analyzed using a total or incremental analysis. So, let us have this example. Okay? So, assuming this is the old equipment, okay? And this is, we are still on year 1 and year 2 of the total 5-year period. I think this is table 12-9. So this is talking about the 5-year markers. Okay? So if we have year 1 and year 2 depreciated already. Okay? So after 2 years of depreciation, the book value is already 57,600. Okay? Simple computation of your depreciation. Okay? So if you're going to buy the new computer, it will cost 180,000. You're going to deduct the cash flow from the sale of the old computer, then you will have a net cost of the new computer at 135,400. Where did you get 44,600? We will just assume that this is the price of selling the new equipment. Okay? So, considering this, so the depreciation on the new computer will be as follows. This is based on the 135,400 and using the 5-year markers. So this will be the depreciation there. The depreciation on the old computer, this is going to be based on the remaining depreciation, okay, for year 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? So this will be the incremental depreciation, meaning this will be the additional depreciation. This is going to be computed by getting the difference of the new depreciation and the old depreciation multiplied by the tax rate. This will be the tax shield benefit. Okay? So, to continue, this will be the tax shield benefit and then we are going to get the cost savings if we are not going to get the new machine. Okay? So, 42. Okay, the question is where did we get the 42? Basically, that's going to be wait, where did we get the 42? 42, wait. Purchase price is 120. Wait, where did we get the 42,000 cost savings? Wait, I need to know where we got that. Where did we get this? This is if we are not going to incur. Maybe the cost savings is if we are not going to buy the new equipment. Okay, so the cost savings will be 42,000 for the next 6 years. Okay, multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. We will get the after-tax savings, and then after which we are going to get the tax shield and then cost savings, giving us the total annual benefit multiplied by the present value factor for using the 10% tax rate. And this will be the present value. So the present value of the incremental benefits is 159.50. So with that, we are going to compare this, okay, with our cost of the new asset. Okay, so if this is the incremental, or if this is the benefit of having the new asset, okay, comparing it with the cost of 135,400. So basically there is a positive benefit, okay, because this is the cost but the benefit is 159.50. So it means that we can buy the new equipment because it has a positive net benefit later on. This is 159.50 minus the 135,400. So that's basically how it works. The only question there is how we got the cost savings. I'll try to get back on how it was computed. Okay, so we also discuss elective expensing. So what do you mean by elective expensing? So it is basically the concept of writing off tangible property in the purchase tier for up to 100,000. I think this is not applicable in the Philippines. Okay, it is beneficial because there is a possibility for you to have a higher benefit, because if you expense everything outright, you will have no income tax to pay. Okay, so it is it is beneficial to small businesses because the allowance is phased out dollar for dollar when total property purchases exceed 200,000 in a given year. Okay, so basically you are allowed elective expensing of a maximum of 100,000 if you incur more than 200 or more than 200,000 in capital expenditures in a given year. Again, this is not applicable in the Philippines. Okay, the only concept here is that giving an expense or given an option to expense up to 100,000 will give you a bigger expense resulting to lower taxes. Okay, so that's basically the concepts there. We are not going to this is just the concept, but we are not going to apply this because we are in the Philippines. There is no such rule for elective expensing in the Philippines. So that's the end of our discussion. We will proceed with the assessment later on. Thank you.